There's a moment that comes for almost every older adult, usually when we're standing in our basement or attic, surrounded by the things we've carefully preserved for decades. We're looking at our mother's china cabinet, the quilt our grandmother stitched by hand, the antique desk we refinished ourselves, and we realize, with a sinking feeling in our chest, that no one wants them. Our children politely change the subject when we bring it up. Our grandchildren glance at their phones. We thought these treasures would be cherished, fought over even, the way we once saw in families on television. Instead, they're met with silence, with excuses, with a kind of gentle rejection that cuts deeper than any argument ever could. If you've felt this, you're not alone. In fact, you're part of a generation experiencing something unprecedented in human history. For the first time, the things we valued most, the objects we believed carried our family's story, are being left behind. And the emotional weight of that reality is crushing people in ways we rarely talk about. But what if I told you that this isn't really about the stuff at all? What if the pain you're feeling points to something far more important, something we can actually address and heal? By the end of this conversation, you'll understand why this rejection happens, what it truly means, and most importantly, how to find peace with it while still honoring what matters most. Let me tell you about Margaret. She's 74, a retired librarian from Ohio. For 30 years, she collected depression glass, beautiful pieces in delicate pink and green that her own mother had cherished during the hardest times. Margaret added to the collection, learned the history of each pattern, displayed them with care. She imagined her daughter Emily setting her own table with them one day, perhaps telling Margaret's future great-grandchildren where they came from. Last Thanksgiving, Margaret finally asked Emily directly if she wanted the collection. Emily looked uncomfortable. She said, "Mom, I love you, but I just don't have room. Our house is small, and honestly, I'm trying to simplify, not add more things." Margaret smiled and said she understood, but inside something crumbled. It wasn't really about the glass. It was about feeling like her life's care, her taste, her history didn't matter to the person she loved most. This is happening in millions of homes right now. Estate sale companies report that the market for traditional antiques and family heirlooms has collapsed. Solid wood furniture, fine china, crystal, silver, even jewelry that once passed reverently through generations, these items now sell for pennies on the dollar, if they sell at all. But the statistics don't capture the heartbreak. We need to understand what's actually happening here, because it's not simple and it's not cruel, even though it feels that way. The first truth is this: your children are living in a completely different world than the one you built your life in. This isn't an excuse. It's a fact we must absorb to find peace. Think about Robert, 68, who worked for 35 years at the same manufacturing company. He bought a home at 25, filled it slowly and proudly with quality things meant to last forever. Heavy furniture, complete dish sets, decorative items that signaled stability and success. For Robert's generation, these objects meant you had made it. They were proof of a life well lived. But Robert's son, Jason, has moved 7 times in 15 years, chasing jobs across 3 states. Jason and his wife both work full-time. They have 2 young children. Their home is 1,500 square feet, not the 2,500 Robert raised his family in. When they do have free time, they're driving kids to activities or collapsing in exhaustion. The idea of owning things that require special care, that can't go in the dishwasher, that need dusting and space, feels like a burden, not a gift. This isn't about laziness or disrespect. It's about a fundamental shift in how life is structured. Your children are time poor and space poor in ways your generation rarely was. They've also been taught relentlessly that experiences matter more than possessions. They've watched minimalism become a movement. They've seen climate conversations that make them feel guilty about consumption. They're drowning in their own stuff already, the toys and gear that modern parenting demands. So when you offer them your treasures, they don't see what you see. You see memory and meaning. They see one more thing to clean, move, store, and eventually dispose of themselves. But that's only part of the picture. There's something deeper happening, something about identity and how we build it across generations. When you hold your mother's brooch or your father's watch, you're not just holding metal and stone. You're holding a connection to your history, to people you loved, to a version of yourself that still remembers being young in their presence. These objects are anchors. They prove that your family existed, that they mattered, that you came from somewhere solid. In a world that moves faster every year, these things feel like roots. Your children don't need those roots in the same way. Not because they don't love you, but because they're building identity differently. They take photos, thousands of them, stored in clouds. They create digital scrapbooks. They value travel and education and experiences that can't be packed in a box. When they think about honoring you, they think about carrying forward your values, your advice, your recipes, maybe. But not your furniture. This creates a painful disconnect. You feel like you're offering a piece of your soul, and they feel like they're being asked to take on an obligation they can't manage. Both feelings are real, both are valid, and that's what makes this so hard. Think about Linda, 71, whose mother escaped Europe during the war with almost nothing. Linda's mother slowly, painfully rebuilt a life in America. Every object in her home represented survival, safety, achievement against impossible odds. When Linda inherited these things, she felt she was holding her mother's very life story. Now, Linda's children, comfortable Americans who've never known hunger or danger, look at those same objects and see old-fashioned decor. Linda feels like they're erasing her mother's sacrifice, but her children simply cannot feel what Linda feels. They're 3 generations removed from that pain. This is the weight many of us carry. We're trying to pass down not just objects, but emotions, memories, entire narratives, and objects can't carry all of that on their own. Does this resonate with you? I'd love to hear your story in the comments, because I know each of you has a version of this happening in your own family. Then comes a quieter change, one that often surprises people. It's about how we define family legacy itself. For most of human history, family wealth and identity were literally tangible. You passed down land, tools, furniture, jewelry. These things kept their value, sometimes grew in value. They were both symbolic and practical. A young couple setting up a home needed dishes and furniture and linens. Of course they wanted grandmas. Today, young people furnish their first apartments from IKEA and thrift stores, or they don't furnish them much at all because they don't plan to stay long. They buy dishes from Target that they won't cry over if they break. When they want something special, they scroll through Etsy for items that match their personal aesthetic, not the family aesthetic. The practical need for heirlooms has vanished. At the same time, what they do want from you is different. They want your time, your stories told in your own voice, maybe recorded, your recipes with the notes about how grandma really made it. They want you to come visit, to meet them in their lives, rather than waiting for them to return to yours. They want your encouragement, your wisdom about raising children or navigating careers. George, 76, finally understood this when his granddaughter asked if he'd do a video interview about his childhood on the farm. She had no interest in his old farm tools, but she spent 3 hours recording him talking, asking questions, laughing at his stories. George realized she was collecting something more valuable than objects. She was collecting him. This is the shift we must make in our own minds. Legacy isn't wood and glass. It's not even blood. Legacy is what we teach, how we love, the values we model, the stories we tell. When we cling too tightly to the idea that our legacy lives in our stuff, we miss the actual legacy we're creating every day through our presence and words. And this leads us to a truth that is often harder to accept. Some of the pain we feel isn't really about our children's rejection. It's about our own fear of mortality and irrelevance. I need to say this gently but clearly because it matters. When we stand in that basement surrounded by things no one wants, what we're sometimes really feeling is, does anyone want me? Will I be remembered? Did my life matter? The stuff becomes a stand-in for those deeper, more terrifying questions. Consider Patricia, 69, who realized during therapy that her obsession with passing down her collection wasn't about the collection at all. It was about terror. Terror that when she died, she'd be forgotten within a generation. That her grandchildren wouldn't know her name, that all the care she'd put into creating a beautiful home and life would vanish like it never happened. The heirlooms felt like proof she'd existed, like messages in bottles to the future. Once Patricia named that fear, she could address it directly. She started writing letters to each grandchild. She organized her photos and labeled them. She made peace with the idea that memory fades, but that's true for everyone, even kings and presidents. What matters is how we love the people in front of us right now. This is the work many of us need to do. We need to separate the objects from our worth. We need to stop asking our children to carry our emotional burden disguised as furniture. We need to grieve what we thought would happen, the imagined future where our things stayed in the family forever, and accept what's actually happening. If you're finding wisdom in this conversation, I hope you'll stay with us. We're building a community here of people who are willing to face these difficult truths with grace and help each other through them. The question becomes, what do we actually do with all this stuff? First, we give ourselves permission to let go. This is crucial. You are not betraying your mother by selling her china. You are not disrespecting your father by donating his tools to someone who'll use them. Objects are not people. Your parents live in your memory, in your habits, in the way you love your own children, not in cabinets. Some pieces may truly be valuable. Get them appraised by a reputable professional, not just a quick online search. If they're worth substantial money, sell them and use that money for something meaningful. Travel, gifts to grandchildren for education, donations to causes that mattered to your parents. This is a way of honoring the value in a new form. For everything else, be realistic. Estate sale companies, donation centers, even charities that pick up furniture, these are all acceptable choices. You're not throwing your family away. You're acknowledging that these objects have finished their purpose in your life. But here's what I want you to do before you let anything go. Choose a very small number of items, maybe 5 to 10 total, that truly carry irreplaceable meaning for you personally. Not things you think you should keep. Things that genuinely make you feel connected and happy. Keep those, display them, enjoy them for yourself, not for some imagined future recipient. Then, and this is important, document the stories. Write down or record why each piece mattered, who owned it, what it meant, what memories it holds. Put these stories in a format your family can access, maybe a shared digital file, maybe a small handwritten book. Give the stories, even if you can't give the objects. Stories are light. They travel across generations in ways furniture cannot. Arthur, 73, did something beautiful. He photographed every significant item in his home. Under each photo, he wrote its story in his own hand. Then he had the whole thing made into a small book, one copy for each of his 3 children. He told them, keep the book, do what you need to with the things. His children were moved to tears. They'd been dreading the guilt of disposing of items they couldn't keep. Instead, they got something they truly wanted. Their father's voice, his memories, proof that he knew they loved him, even if they couldn't take his furniture. This is the kind of creative thinking that turns heartbreak into healing. Let me also say this, there may be one child or grandchild who does want a few pieces. Let them choose. Don't assign items based on what you think they should want. Ask what actually speaks to them and honor that. Sometimes a grandchild wants the quilt because they genuinely remember being wrapped in it, or the mixing bowl because they made cookies with you using it. Those connections are real. Trust them. For some of you, there's another layer of pain here. You're not just facing rejection of your heirlooms. You're facing estrangement, distance, fractured relationships where the stuff is just one more symbol of everything that went wrong. If that's you, I see you. This is exponentially harder. The heirlooms become wrapped up in all the unresolved hurt. If you're able, consider whether the stuff is becoming a battleground that doesn't need to be one. Sometimes letting go of the objects is practice for letting go of control, of old hurts, of the family story you wished you had. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is release it all with love, even unreciprocated love, and find peace in your own life, regardless of what others do. But even in the best families, where love is strong and communication is open, this heirloom issue still stings. And that's okay. You're allowed to grieve. You're allowed to feel sad that the world has changed in this way. You don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt. What you cannot do, what will only deepen the pain, is let this become a wedge between you and the people you love. Please hear me on this. Your relationship with your living children and grandchildren matters infinitely more than what happens to your possessions. Do not poison your remaining time together by guilting them, by making comments about how they don't care, by threatening to leave things to charity just to hurt them. They do care. They care about you. They're just showing it differently than you expected. Meet them there. Here's what I've learned matters more than any object ever could. It's presence. It's showing up in the lives of your children and grandchildren in the way they need, not just the way you want to give. It's asking about their lives, their struggles, their joys. It's being a soft place to land in a hard world. It's telling them you're proud of them, that you see how hard they're working, that you love them not for what they achieve, but simply because they're yours. That is the heirloom that never gets rejected. That is what they will carry forward. They may not remember your furniture, but they will remember how you made them feel. They will tell their children, your great-grandchildren, about the way you loved them. That story becomes the family treasure. So yes, grieve the loss of what you imagined. Take time to sit with that sadness, but then release it. Free yourself from the weight of those objects. Free your children from the guilt, and step into the time you have left with lighter hands and a fuller heart. You have already given your family more than things. You have given time, sacrifice, love, wisdom, probably more than you even recognize. That is your legacy. It was never in the attic. It was always in them, woven into who they are and how they move through the world. In the end, we are not our possessions, we are our love. And love, unlike china and furniture, grows more valuable with every generation that passes it forward.